Yes, okay. As you notice, things look different for this part of the service, and that's because we have a special presentation today. Um, but just to give you a quick reminder, we are doing the theme of being church, what it means to be the church, and we're in this section about the church in action. And as we visit that, it's really about the Great Commission. And we already covered two of these. Dave has covered the aspect of going and spoke about the church in Antioch being a sending church in which people, went into the world. And the people of Antioch themselves being people who were just in regular walk of life and encountered God. And then I spoke last week about making disciples and the process through which a person goes, and how we should be not just people who are discipled, but that we are people who are being discipled as well. And I use the illustration of the Sea of Galilee versus the Dead Sea. The Sea of Galilee has input and output. It receives discipleship, so to speak, and it also gives it out. And what makes the Dead Sea dead, and what will kill the church in a way, is if there's only an input, just like the Dead Sea, but there's no output. There is no discipling that goes on, the passing on of God's Word, of His purposes, and in connection with other people. And so today, it's actually an extension of who we are called the disciple. And the passage here out of the Great Commission that Jesus gives talks about reaching people of all nations. Make disciples of all nations. In the scripture reading that was read for us, it is actually comes out of the book of Isaiah. And Isaiah, if you read the whole prophecy, is actually at the beginning about how Israel in many ways has failed, has become that Dead Sea. Instead of being what God had said to Abraham, that your descendants will be a blessing to all nations, Israel in many ways had become a warlord, had become a nation based on power, a nation that was only interested in, their own interests, and not representing God in a manner that helped the other nations to know and glorify God. So even if you read the past, Israel in some ways even became a curse to other nations. Instead of doing the things that God had asked them to do, they began to do other things that actually harmed the other nations, including themselves. And so Isaiah is really at the front end a book that's saying, stop disobeying God. Stop, messing up what He's called you to be. And in this second chapter, even right from the beginning of His prophecies, where He's speaking to the people of Israel, He's saying that God will call Himself, through the things that He's going to do, He will call all nations to Himself. And in the most beautiful part of probably the passage that we read, it really makes me think of all the conflicts in our world, that they will beat their swords into plowshares, and that they will have peace. And I think about places like Ukraine and Russia, and I'm extremely saddened by the church, that actually the Russian Orthodox Church that would support the invasion of Ukraine. It has become a Dead Sea church. But this is not beyond. It's not just about these conflicts. It's about us as well. How are we as a people reaching the nations? And here's an interesting thing. It used to be maybe 100 years ago or even 50 years ago, people would separate what we would call local missions, what we might call evangelism, even 20 years ago, and overseas missions. So the term mission, if you said it about 50 years ago, even 30 years ago, or even today in some contexts, People are always thinking, oh, mission is overseas. But here's what's happened in the past 50 years, maybe 30 years, and that is globalism, which is that we have access to travel that is quick, efficient, and speedy. Our communications are no longer carried by letter that takes months to cross an ocean. It just instantly gets to our phones, right? Which is to say that the mission field to all nations happens everywhere. It happens both locally, people coming into places like Vancouver. You must know someone who's a different ethnicity than yourself, that comes from a different culture. And so the mission of discipling, making disciples of all nations, is all of our work, even here. But there is still a continuum and a place for missions in far-flung places. Because when they enter into our sphere of influence, we begin to exude perhaps a questioning of our own cultures. And so we can engage in that way. If a person never emerges outside their culture, or if no one ever enters into their culture or into their sphere, they will just continue in their own way and path. Which is why we have missions both on the local level, but also need it on a global level. And some people are called to local ministry in your daily lives, and others are called to a global ministry elsewhere, to leave where they are from to another culture. And so when we think about all nations, we have to think on an entire level of both that incorporates both the global understanding as well as the local understanding. And we go to the places and we are involved in the mission and ministry of the church, the ministry of Jesus, in multiple ways. So support a local missionary. Support a overseas missionary. Like, these are the things that we... And you yourself have conversations with people from different cultures and live in a manner in which they might see the light of Christ. Now, today, why we have this whole setup is that we have a very special set of guests, and that is Ray and Phoua. And as you know, we're going to be having a picnic for them. This is their last service with us, sadly. And I'm glad they brought along Phua's brother here too, so we want to recognize him visiting us. But I'm going to invite Ray and Phoua to come up, and I'd like to talk to them because we know, and perhaps they've shared with you, that in their hearts they have a foreign mission in their future as well. So come on up. And Coriel too. She's the star. All right. So I don't know. You might have to pull the mic a little off and pass it back and forth. We'll see what works best for you. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we just respond, and we'll have a conversation back and forth. This is why our service is a little different today. But I'm going to ask you a question that's simply about context, and that is, what brought you to Vancouver?
Regent.
There you go.
Regent College.
Why Regent? What okay. we try to keep it concise, but what made you, why go to a seminary?
Because I thought it was the right thing to do.
To do what?
To be better equipped to do full-time ministry.
Oh, okay. Now, tell me a little more about that. Because what were you both doing before you came to Vancouver? Besides getting married.
We were serving in Japan.
Oh.
As missionaries.
Okay.
Of the short-term variety.
Okay. Tell me about that. And so, what led you to a short-term mission in Japan?
was a midtermer. So I was there for midterm. It was only 1 year though. Well, for me, I studied missions in school actually. So I went to a Bible college. I graduated with a Bible degree and an intercultural studies degree. So my goal had always been to go into missions at some point. And during my schooling, I had an internship trip that took me to Japan in 2006. And I was only in Japan for like 10 days. But it was really impactful for me, the pastor that I worked with. I remember before we left, he looked at us, like all of like my friends who were with me, and he just said like, "Hey, Japan needs missionaries. You guys should come back as missionaries to Japan." So that just stayed with me. I think just also the situation at the church of I was in youth ministry. I was serving youth ministry, and there weren't any youth in that church for me. Like I didn't see any. I saw how difficult it was to try to serve the youth in Japan because they were not really at the church. And so that was something that they were concerned about. And that hit me because I was serving with the youth as well. So, yeah, after the tsunami and earthquake and tsunami and stuff in 2011, I prayed a prayer that God would bring me back. And so he did. And I had the opportunity to then serve in 2015 and 16 for one full term.
Now, you didn't go together, did you, in the front end of this? I know the story, but I don't know if everyone does.
No. We did not know each other before Japan. We did not know each other existed before Japan.
So how did you get to Japan? Because we know she went on her short term, the 10-day trip. And
Right. So, yeah, like, in contrast to, like, Phua's journey and story where she felt called to missions and full-time ministry earlier, I did not. I did my undergraduate degree in engineering, and I worked as an engineer for a bit. And then I felt like I enjoyed the work I was doing, but then I felt God kind of nudging me elsewhere. And at first I was hesitant. I was not sure. And I needed to be sure that it was from God and not just something else. And I kind of, sort of tested God.
Tell me about that.
Yes. I prayed a prayer that was a bit dangerous, a bit risky, but I prayed a prayer saying, God, if this is really from you, you have to do something with my job. Because I'm not going to quit an engineering job at this point in time. I've worked too hard for this, and I enjoy this lifestyle too much. So, yeah, you'll have to make the choice for me. And he did. I got laid off.
And, no. Now I get the dangerous part.
Yeah. He took the job away, and I really had kind of no excuse. Not really no excuse, but it confirmed the things that I had been feeling. And it made it clear that he was behind it. And because of that, I felt a lot safer moving in that direction.
So you weren't upset with God per se, were you? Or I'm curious.
No, actually I wasn't. That is a curious thing. Like the day I got laid off, I was actually, it felt like a weight had been lifted off of me, which is kind of the opposite feeling that you would have losing your job. So.
Wow.
So then, because I knew it was from him, it was, okay, God, where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? Japan, I didn't necessarily have a heart for Japan or the Japanese people per se. It was more so there was an opportunity for my short term, which was 2+ years, to be in Japan for at least 2 years. And I think that's where I was like, okay, God, if you're really trying to do something, I'm gonna respond and not just do like, a couple weeks or a month, but actually go for something a little longer term to see if I could actually do it. Yeah. So I was in Japan from 2011 to 2015, Phoua did her vision trip in 2013, and but her vision trip was at the church that planted the church that I was working at. So I was at the plant church. She was at the mother church.
Okay.
And we met there.
I'd love to ask you more about that, but just stay on target on this. But
Stay on target.
Well,
Target.
I guess as God, called you to Japan, both of you in some way, shape, or form, you also found each other. I guess, right? That's
yeah, and that's also something like for I think for both of us, like conversations we had when we had met one another, like I think there was the common ground was like we wanted to do this together with somebody else. Like we wanted to do this with someone, and it just happened that we were the someones for each other, and so I think that was I think another way where like for me, like I was able to discern kind of God's calling and feel comfortable moving forward and following. Because I think initially I did not want to like leave the things that I had kind of started building for myself.
What was it scary for you? What sort of made that resistance? I'm curious.
Being raised in a Chinese home.
That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, like
we're raised in a particular way of certain values.
You do well in school to get a good job. You get a good job to have a good career. You have a good career so you can have money and buy all the things you want to have and all the security and
right.
All of that was not. It was like kind of going away, fizzling away.
And this is a deeper question, but have you ever regretted following Jesus in that way?
No.
Okay, tell me about that. Well, obviously,
no.
You met each other. Coriel wouldn't be here. I mean, all this stuff.
No, I think there was one instance in the middle of my first term in Japan where I'd come back home and I was hanging out with my friends from university who like were still working in engineering and doing well and doing really cool things. I think there was a part there was like, oh, that would be fun. That work seems, in a sense, easier than what I'm doing right now. It seems a bit more fulfilling in a way. Like I'd be able to see the results rather than what I'm doing now. I don't see a whole lot.
But you still wouldn't change anything.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at this point. No, not at all.
Oh. Well, tell me a little more about Japan. Like, what is ministry in Japan like? You had mentioned that it's difficult. There weren't any youth. I mean, you mentioned Phoua, but
well, I think it also depends on where the church is.
Okay.
And the church I had served in is, it's close to a bigger city in north, I guess, eastern Japan. Very small church, as most churches actually tend to be in Japan, but just mostly like older couples, and then I think like there were like 3 or 4 kids, and then there were like a handful of young adults who were, I think they were all college students, but there was like no one in between, I think the age of like 5 and college that I met in that church. And I think that's just the lifestyle of Japan. Like once you hit middle school and high school, school activities take over everything.
Right.
And they do those activities on Sundays. So they're supposed to be in clubs. There's in those clubs, then either if it's sports or anything else, they have activities throughout the weekend. And so they're busy that way because school is very important.
So how did your heart develop for the Japanese people? Did you always have that, or is it?
I think growing up, I enjoyed like Japanese things. Like for me, Japanese anime was one of those first things that I grew up watching. Like watch in the morning, and I always enjoyed that. And through those things, I learned about Japanese culture.
Okay.
And I always found it very interesting. Yeah, it was like through the arts, I guess. And then when I actually got to Japan, I got to meet the people, and saw like some of the challenges that they had, and the questions they were asking and the prayers that they were giving. Then that was like when it was like, oh, like how can I be a part of this? But that was even in the air for years. I think when I got back from my mission trip or my internship at school, I prayed the prayer of like, God, like, is Japan somewhere you have for me or not? And that prayer was never answered. And that was a struggle that I had, just not knowing for sure what God had for me, but having to come to the realization that that was something I wanted more than maybe God had for me at that point in my life, and then having to give that up for Him to respond in a way that I understood, I guess. Yeah, and so like the earthquake and tsunami, I think that hit hard for me because it hit the city, or hit close to where the area I went to, and so the big prayer that came out of that was like the concern of just understanding the Christian population of Japan is very small, and there's the idea of all the people who passed away in the tragedy, just understanding that maybe 1% of those people knew who God was, and those were the only ones who knew how to call out to God. I think that really broke my heart. I think that really changed how I thought about Japan and how I prayed for Japan. In 2011.
Oh, thanks for sharing that. Yeah. So where are y'all at now? Because I know you're stepping away from our community, and there's some time here. Of course, you stayed a little bit longer, COVID and everything else, and we got Coriel. This is process, I'm guessing. But where are you going now? Like, what are your plans moving forward?
Well, we are moving hopefully on Friday to. It seems like we're actually moving this year, guys. It's been 3 years coming.
I know there's a couple of stall notes.
So it's looking like it's actually going to happen, and we will be going to Colorado. My brother will drive our car, and then we'll fly from Seattle. We'll be staying with family, raised families in Colorado, so we'll stay with them, have time with family, and in that time also prepare. We're going to start our application process to join a mission agency to prepare for Japan. And so we'll see how that process goes, because depending on how long or short that is, first of all, if we're accepted, and then if they'll, like the process of support raising, training, and all those things, it may take up to 2 years before we could possibly be going to Japan. But that is still our goal. Our hope is to go to Japan to serve, just in a different context from what we had done when we were there last. And there would be mainly the hope of serving the younger people those who have Japanese who have left Japan for either school or work, and then are returning back to Japan. And in their time away, they have maybe met someone who's Christian or been introduced to Christianity, but have not yet confessed they have not become Christian, but maybe are interested and open to it. We've met a lot in our time of doing ministry on campus, and see that there's a disconnect once they get home. There's no one to connect with them because they're not Christian. So the Christian communities don't specifically cater to them. And we feel like there's a missing space that we could possibly be a part of.
Amongst the students who return or people who've been on campus, but they've heard the gospel, they've been exposed to Christianity, but it just ends there.
Yeah, they're really interested, but they're not ready to join the church.
Yeah.
Because that's a huge commitment. It's a very different environment in Japan.
Yes.
But they still want to connect. They still want to continue to learn. Because like we worked with students who have gone back to Japan, and even this year when we went back, I've met with some of them, and so like the friendships are there. It's just there's no one there to connect with them to continue those steps that maybe they're still interested in, unless they join the church.
So you are literally making disciples of all nations, or getting out there to disciple them, to help teach them about Jesus and the things that they want to learn and grow in.
Yeah, we hope to. That's what we would like to journey with them in that, and see kind of, who is Jesus to them? Like, what can they see in Japan for them, and how does that connect with what they're learning about who Christ is?
So how can we as a church support and pray for you guys as you go forward from here? What would be helpful?
First, that we actually make it to Colorado.
Okay. Yes, drive safe.
We want to get there. We want to actually move. And then the application process as we start that.
Yep.
I think just like all the changes that will be, because now we have a baby and I will still be in school. I'll be taking one course to see how I can do that, if I'm capable of doing that. And then also trying to do this application process. And so and we're moving, right? And so there's just a lot of changes and next steps that we have. So we could pray for those beginning steps.
Anything else you want to add or to that?
We don't have a church community,
finding a church community
in Colorado.
Right.
Because Ray moved to Minnesota so that we could prepare for our wedding. And then from Minnesota, moved here. So we haven't spent that much time in Colorado together. And so we'll be looking for a new church.
So certainly praying for that. All of these things, the application, finding of a church, you're settling into Colorado as you equip yourselves to go in a little while to Japan, and it still stays in sight. So, I mean, as you know our congregation relatively well. If there is something that you wanted to say to encourage us as followers of Jesus where we are, or, what would you want to share with us in regards to that?
I think, firstly, I'm actually quite bummed to be leaving during this time, because I'm actually quite excited with what's going on within this community right now. I think there's a lot of really cool things happening, throughout the congregation, but like with the youth, and kind of the conversations and the gatherings that they've had and where they're moving with that is really cool. It would have been really nice to be part of that for longer, but that would have been that. So that's exciting. Also, just the direction, these conversations that are taking place with vision and revisioning in a sense, and I feel I remember our first conversation way back when, and how you were explaining this church and how it wasn't a church to check off all the boxes. It wasn't we need to have all these ministries to be a church. It's we respond to the needs of the congregation. And I think what's cool is that kind of in part through COVID, we're at that stage where we're recognizing that we have to be different now. And there are different motivations for being that, but it seems like it's at a cool stage where I feel like there's the opportunity for new things to happen, and that would be exciting to see. So I think with that, the encouragement there is if there are needs that you guys feel are necessary, just start them. And I think I remember from our conversation, Ted, you were saying we want people who see the need to start it, and we want to equip them to continue moving forward with it, right? So I was it's in a sense coming full circle, which is great. Also, I think with Phoua and I, our stories are quite different leading up to when we met in Japan. Very, very different background, upbringing, and similarities, of course, but quite different in how God has led us to this point and to Japan. But I don't know. I think God knows each of us, and He works in a way that reaches each of us in our own unique ways. I think for Phoua, she's been set on missions. She's been set on Japan. She's been set on this kind of ministry for a while. Whereas I keep testing it. I keep thinking, I overthink it, and I keep processing it. And I think over the past few years, especially, like, I've really, like, since Regent, since COVID, I've had a lot of time to just sit in my thoughts, which sometimes is not a good thing. But in this situation, like, I really felt confirmed and kind of encouraged by God through a lot of the conversations I had. And I think that's where the encouragement comes from, is like, if there are any inklings from, like, within, just try it out. Like, you don't have to jump all in all at once, because I mean, that's not what I did. I kind of dipped my toes in, and
so God slowly teases that in and opens up the doors.
And he responds. Like, it's not like he's just going to push you in and go. I think he walks with us. And I think he does respond to our needs. Like, I remember having, like, conversations with God, saying, while in Japan, saying, like, this is really hard. I can't do this. If you want me to do this, you're going to have to do, like, I'm going to need this or that, or, and he doesn't always he doesn't respond in the same way, but he responds. And I feel like, I think that would be the encouragement here. Like,
thank you for that. I don't know, Phoua, did you have anything you want to say to the congregation as you're heading on your way out?
In a similar sense that I think God knows us, and if we can trust that he knows us and he cares for us, he will bring about the things that are necessary. And I think in my journey of faith and in my journey of discernment, learning how to trust God was really hard in the beginning. But since, like, I had a really hard journey of God asking me to let things go, and that was, like, a super challenging for me. It was very life-changing, though, and once I come out of that, I think when I feel like God is leading me somewhere, I just trust it. I don't challenge it as much anymore. I still do pray about it to make sure, like, I'm trying to follow, but I also trust that, if I make a mistake in the direction that I'm choosing to go, God will come and let me know. Right. So I'm trying my best. It's not like I'm ignoring it and just doing. I do think I'm following what I feel God is leading me to, but I also trust that if I end up making a wrong turn, that God will turn me around and be like, hey, this is actually, slightly that way is better. So I think in that way I have learned how to, maybe that's why decisions are easier for me when it comes between the two of us. And that's because of the faith journey that God has brought me through, and that's what he's taught me. And there's also been challenges in my life where, like I said, my interest in Japan maybe happened because I started watching anime as a young girl, and I really liked it. And when some people hear that, they're kind of like, wait, so you just want to go for the fun of it? And it's like, well, no. But it doesn't mean that those things didn't draw out the interest for me. And it doesn't mean that God can't use those things to help you to learn how to love those people. So don't let people just judge you on those things. Like, really allow yourself to pray and be prayed over, and see what God is saying in even those little things. Like, your interests are your interests for a reason. Trust that God knows them and that God cares for you. And I think he will help you to find ways in which you can serve him, or ways in which you can reach others through those.
Well, thanks. It seems like both of your messages are the same. We can trust God to know us in the shape of who we are, no matter what we're doing, and then just respond to him, right? Just trust what he's doing, and letting go seems to be a thing too, from what you both shared. And I want to say that both of you are very inspiring to us as a church. We're so excited to see where God is going to take you all, and we want to bless you. We want to pray over you. The ways that you work with the youth, the ways that you just worked in the church, and bring Coriel amongst us too. Your family has been a blessing to our church in really deep and rich ways. And I know, I speak for everyone here, that we really miss both of you as you go on your way. But we also know that you're going to the places that God has called you to. And we're excited about that for you and with you. So in a few moments, we're going to pray for you. But I'm going to ask Evelyn perhaps to play one more song, and then we're going to invite the children in too so that they can participate in the commissioning or sending or praying over you and sending you off. So maybe we'll just grab a seat and we'll come back to you.